GM, GM. So, trade of the day. Let me find fresh chart. Here we go. So, BTC, what I'm looking at, if you remember yesterday, I was looking at here on the way down. I was talking about Bitcoin is new, there doesn't seem to be much support. Price action's changed. A lot of people have left. A bunch of people interested are gone for now. Tougher place to trade right now. If it doesn't reclaim 65, today could have ended the momentum. Thankfully, we did reclaim all that, but I want to explain what I meant by that. So, as price was coming down here, in all the areas where you expect to see reaction, we saw an initial reaction and then no follow through, so no strength. So take away the EMAs. Price came down initially and held at this level, was unable to hold it. Then it took out one set of lows and was weak around the lows, right? Wasn't able to hold there, slipped lower, pushed back up, wasn't able to hold there, slipped lower again. And so as we were getting towards this 63 level, there was clearly no interest there on the lower time frames. So traders had basically abandoned their positions. And it was a combination of we've just hit all-time high, it could be unwinding, we don't know where it's going to go. So my reading of it was a bunch of longs decided to get out, not enter new positions, sit on the sidelines, not support the market. The buying seemed to disappear in that area. But thankfully, just after I'd written that, we saw a proper capitulation. And that capitulation is important because that is where capitulation is forced, right? So there was no real willing buyers or sellers in here. It was just kind of aimlessly drifting. There was people, well, there were some willing sellers. There was people exiting their positions. But everything that happened here below 63.3, that was all forced. So that's forced liquidations. And with the massive collapse at the bottom, you can see that too. So that's capitulation. That area might get revisited. And if it does get revisited, I expect to see strong support. I don't see from a higher time frame, right? As long as we keep going up, it's fine. But if we start to pull back, I don't see any strong support in the lower time frames at 66, 65, 64, even towards 63. Meaning, if price is going to come back down and find a support, it might just bleed and bleed and bleed and bleed until it reaches an area where there's a bit of interest again, and then it starts to find support there, right? So I'd be looking at that if we do pull back. It's basically like saying there's a bit of a no man's land in here in red, right? There's an area here where I wouldn't bid it, and I don't think other people would bid it either. I think we'd fill back into this gap. But once we start to get back down towards these lows and this previous area of support, that's where I would expect to see some actual support re-enter the market. You can see the liquidations. So Bitcoin liquidations and the global liquidations, which I'll take Bitcoin off. And we'll look at it here. On a daily perspective, that's the biggest altcoin liquidation since FTX, probably. Bigger than FTX. That's the biggest altcoin liquidation since September 2021, right? So that's the biggest one we've had. Bigger than, well, sorry, December. Yeah, December, sorry. We had a bigger one. And bigger than FTX collapse, bigger than the August shakeout, bigger than the shakeout pre-ETF. So massive shakeout on altcoin leverage. Really good to see. Over 600 million. That would be something you would expect to hold. So if we come back down, you'd expect that to hold as a low, just like this big one held as a low, just like this other one held as a low for like total three. Decent liquidations on Bitcoin as well, both on the short side and on the long side. So from those kind of very typical bull market things you look at, when you see that mass type of liquidations, it quite often forms a bottom for the market. So that's good. That's really healthy. That's what we want to see. And so as Bitcoin continues to grind higher, I would say if it's going to continue going up, just let it go up. I would expect probably, if there's no pullbacks here, I would probably expect a push to the highs. And at that point, we might find some, and then it pushes down towards these lows again. Obviously, there's always the chance that it just breaks out and doesn't pull back. That's a possibility too. That would probably take pretty big ETF flows for that to happen. Not impossible at all. So I would say if you're going to put weightings on it, the odds of straight grind up and breakout like the green path, maybe 10-20% chance. I would say the highest probability is to follow the red path where we do grind up. We wreck anyone who shorted the all-time high break, and then we come back down, and then or we pull back from here. But in both of these, in the blue and the red path, I think one of them takes the highest, the other one doesn't. But in both of them, I'm looking at this down into this wick, down into this 60k to sort of 63k, 62.5k support as being the area where you want to be looking more closely at a new bottom to form or a retest. So for now, looks good. For now, we're holding, the 4 hour trend hasn't been lost. That's something to watch as well. If we pull back here, I wouldn't expect the 4 hour trend necessarily to hold. If we make a new high, I'd be watching first of all for a pullback into the 4 hour trend, the 4 hour trend bands, and see can it consolidate on them. And then this old breakout of 64, this old level we broke out from, there's one support to watch. Maybe we get some wicks below it. But above 64 is strong. I would definitely, if I was going to add longs, I'd definitely be waiting for some kind of a retest. I wouldn't be wanting to add longs here. Because even though a bunch of people have gotten stopped out, this is the area where if you were adding longs, you wanted to be adding on the dip. If not, you just want to be sitting in spot. So for BTC, there's the paths I'm looking at, and we'll see how it goes today. But yeah, there's some good opportunities to present themselves. We've had the 1 hour, right, where we've had green bands just trended up, down to red bands. The bands are green again. So if we consolidate, move up, if we come back below them and the bands go red and we follow the blue path, the time to buy Bitcoin is when it reclaims the green bands on the 1 hour for the low time frame momentum. And that can then set us up for a break higher. But don't forget, obviously, like I said, when Bitcoin gets around all-time highs, it can spend a lot longer consolidating. And that's not a bad thing. That's what you want to see generally, because that means it's building up a bit of energy, it's building a base, it's cause and effect before having another breakout. So we'll see how that goes. Overall, good market, healthy market. And when I say healthy market, I would lean towards that shakeout was a pretty healthy shakeout. As for total three, as we said, if you're looking to take longs and alts, if you want to take longs and alts, you really want to be waiting for some kind of retest at some point. Because when you see previous altcoin shakeouts like this one, right, it looked great, a few hours after, but we came back once, we came back twice. Previous shakeouts as well, shakes out, comes back, shakeouts. So this is like the one we could be having here, where we've had the shakeout, it goes higher, but guess where it comes back to? It comes back to here, right? So it does come back. Either it goes higher and comes back later, or comes back right away. Given the strength of that reaction, I'd lean towards it possibly being able to go higher first, which would look something like this, where it's able to take the highs, then come back down. I'll probably actually draw a new one, where altcoins might be able to take the highs, then come back down, right? Then have a couple of retests at that level, and then go up. So allow the market to play itself out here, see what happens, and should set up some nice trades moving forward. GM, 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 GM.